students, myself Dr. Divya, Assistant Professor at Department of Chemistry, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So in this session, we will learn the next module, natural resources and environmental pollution. In this, the first topic is the natural resources. So here are the topics in detail. If you want to go there are resources on Earth. The first one, we have to understand what are the resources that are present on Earth. Then why the natural resources are important. Then components of biosphere. So we will understand in detail the present status of natural resources in India. How India is having natural resources in different ways. So resources on Earth, there are many resources the Earth has already present in nature. So most living forms or the life forms need ambient temperature, water and food. So these are the basic requirements for any living organisms to survival. So the resources available on Earth and energy from sun are utilized. So these are utilized. These resources alone are not sufficient. So we also require energy from sun for perfect survival. So that meets the basic requirements to form life on the Earth. So one of them is the natural resource that is already present in stock in the nature, such as air, water, soil, minerals and living organisms. So these form natural resources that help for the mankind for their survival. So these are the most important natural resources that are present on Earth. So why these natural resources are important? Because they are giving us life. So they provide almost everything we need for our survival through its atmosphere, oceans and soil. Atmosphere will give air for breathing, then oceans, water and salt, and then soil is the land for living. So these are the basic requirements that is giving almost everything for the mankind survival. So we use Earth's natural resources to help us survive. So survive on this Earth. Why we are not able to live on other planets other than Earth? Because all the other planets doesn't have these requirements, basic requirements. That is why Earth is having the major already natural resources that are available for the mankind for their perfect sustainability and survival. So a natural resource is any natural material that is used by humans or living things. Not only just humans, there will be other living things like plants, plankton, then animals are also survive on Earth using these natural resources. So examples are water, petroleum, minerals, forests and animals. So these are the naturally present resources for the mankind. So most natural resources are made into product. Can we use minerals as such mind? No, they have to convert it into products for their proper usage. The only one that we can use as such from the nature is the water. And very few natural resources can be used from the natural state like water. So on the Earth, we have some different spheres, like they have the layers of ingredients or the components that we are using in different ways. So the outer crust of the Earth, for example, this is the Earth and the outer crust of the Earth is the lithosphere. So this lithosphere contains the land or the soils, so that we are using for our purpose, and water on the Earth is the hydrosphere, the oceans, sea, ocean, river, lakes and all comes under this hydrosphere, so water body. Then the layer of air around the Earth is the atmosphere, air that is giving us helping to breathe. So this is the component that we use for our daily breathing. So all these together will form a biosphere. So the life supporting zone on Earth, where the atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere interact and make life possible, is nothing but biosphere. All these together is the biosphere forming that will help for our survival. So what are the components of biosphere? If we have to understand how the living or non-living things on the biosphere are present, so there are different forms like biotic and abiotic components. So what are biotic components? They are obtained from living and organic materials. So what are the living and organic material present on earth? Like plants, microbes, fungi, bacteria, etc. are nothing but the living and organic materials. So they include forest products, also forest, wildlife, crops and other living organisms. So these are coming under biotic component. Biotic is biological origin. Biotic is biological origin. So they are coming from biological origin. So most of the resources, all these are renewable because they give birth. So they are renewable. We can generate them very easily. So they can be regenerated themselves. So they keep on plants will be regenerating, and the fungi, bacteria, archaea and animals, all these are regenerating. So therefore they are renewable resources. Fossil fuels are considered as biotic because they are formed from organic matter, but that takes lot of time for the formation. So these are also called as biotic components, but they take time for decaying and forming the fossil fuels. So they come under non-renewable resources. So examples of these biotic components are plants, animals, microorganisms, etc. Biotic are biological origin. Then comes the abiotic component. So these resources come from the non-living or non-organic material. So non-living things and the non-organic material come under abiotic components. So some of these resources are like water and air. They are very important for our life, but they are non-living. So they are also renewable in nature. So these come under abiotic components. Other resources like minerals are non-renewable and exhaustible. For tremendous mining of these minerals becomes exhaustible for that particular mining or the ores present. So they cannot be regenerated very easily. So they come under non-renewable resources in the abiotic components. So minerals have many categories like metallic, non-metallic, minor minerals, etc. Metallic, non-metallic, minor minerals, etc. So these come under abiotic components. So the examples are air, temperature, light, salinity, soil, water, humidity, pH, minerals, etc. These are some of the examples of abiotic components that are present in the biosphere. Then there is development of biosphere. So what is the development of these resources that are present? Different stages of the development of resources. So we are seeing that resources are renewable and non-renewable, but we have to also understand how they are really generated. So that development is also very important. So there are different types of developments like potential resources already present. So they are already exist in nature. So these resources are existing in nature, but they have not been used it means they are not yet utilized completely. So they may be used in the future. For example, petroleum is present in deep seas, deep sea. So they sometimes we are not completely using the petroleum that is present, but that can be mined afterwards in the future generations. So in the sedimentary rocks that is present, that can be extracted and put in use. Until then, it is called potential resource. So as long as they are in stock, they are called potential resources. Actual resources that have been surveyed, quantified, qualified and are currently used in development. That means we have identified them, quantified and qualified the quality and the purpose of that particular resource, and we keep on using. That comes under actual resources. So that is under development, like we will be using for our mankind. So they are typically dependent on technology. So we need some technology for identifying, quantifying and also qualifying that particular resources. So that definitely depends on the technology and level of their feasibility. So example is wood processing, So wood processing is an example for that, wherein we are using wood for making furniture, doors, windows, etc. So this is an example of actual resource that we are using in our daily life. Then reserves. These are reserves, that is an actual resource, part of actual resource that can be developed profitably in future. So there are resources already present, but in future we will be developing that. So that type of resources are called as reserves. Reserve, we are reserving that particular resource for a future. Then stocks, resources that have been surveyed but cannot be used due to lack of technology. So we know that this particular resource can be used, but we don't have an idea how to use. So that is nothing but stocks. We have a stock of resource, but we don't know how to use, and the technology, lacking of technology is the drawback for using that particular resource. So for example, hydrogen generation, water splitting will give hydrogen. That hydrogen can be used as a fuel, but we don't know how to really make a cost effective hydrogen generation. So that is why we are unable to get it into the practice for making hydrogen vehicles. So this is one of the example for stocks. Then ownership. So resources, we are saying resources, and who has to take care, who has the legal authority for these resources. So there are different ownerships that are present for the resources. So individual resources are nothing but owned by privately by the individuals, including plots, houses, then plantations, pastures, ponds, etc. For example, we have a house that is privately, we are owning our own house, and a private land or the ponds that we can buy, or the land we have, we'll be making it a pond. So that has only ownership by the particular individual. Next is a community resources. So these are the resources wherein accessible to a member of a community. So group of people have the authority. Have authority. So here what happens, these people, any decision has to be done only in the discussions by that group. So all those resources which are managed by all the members of the community. So for example, burial grounds, that we community, it comes under community resource. We are using particular thing for the community, it means it is coming under community resource. But what is the resource here? The land is the resource here. Land is the resource here. So we are using that land for the burial purpose of all the community people. So it comes under the community resource. Then is the grazing grounds. So for example, farmers are grazing the ground. They will use that grounds for the animal grazing. So that comes under community resource. Then public parks and picnic spots also comes under community resources, because a community will be taking care. In a particular township, if we have a picnic spot or the public parks, that has to be authorized or maintained by the community, complete community. We cannot really occupy that space for any other purpose. That is how the community resources goes. Next is the national resources. So these belong to a nation, particular nation. For example, the nation will have the ultimate legal powers to acquire them for the public welfare. So for example, we have a land. So if it is in the national resources, then only the nation or the government has the authority to use it for any public welfare. So they cannot use it for their personal things. So it is only can be used for the public welfare. So these includes minerals. So minerals is one of the example. Forests, wildlife, within political boundaries and exclusive economic zone. So these are some of the examples. All these resources, for example, ocean resource also, railways or wildlife or the forest and ocean resources can only be under the nation control and authority. So these comes under nation resource. Next are the international resources. What are the international resources? Wherein different countries come together in discussions for any purpose like usage, utilization, or modification of particular resource, and these are like regulated by international organizations. Example, international waters. So these are like various nations of the world will be participating in the discussions, and only then the utilization takes place. So examples are oceanic resources, petroleum, etc. So these comes under international resources that are available and can be used only with permission and authority from the national, international authorities. So we have been utilizing these resources for various purposes. So what happens ultimately? It gets depleted. So it means they go into lesser number. So there is always important to save the resources also. That is nothing but conserve our national resources. So why is it really important to conserve these natural resources? Because we have to, they should be available for the next generations also. So we need to be very careful on how we use our natural resources and use them only when really necessary. So conservation is like a preservation and careful management of environment and natural resources. So we have to manage and preserve that particular resources for the future generations. So what is that we can do? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. These are the three different notations that we have to take care. Like we should always think of using the resource before, like how do we have to reduce, how can we reuse this particular resource if it is in use, and again recycle. So for example, if we are using some resource, we have to even able to recycle it so that we can use it for again and again. One way is to limit their uses, for example, turning off the faucet or replant the plants. So these are the different ways we can limit their use of resources that are available in nature. And recycling is a process wherein used or discarded materials are treated for reusing. So we can reuse for some other purpose or reuse for the same purpose if we are able to recycle that particular resource that is converted to a material. So non-renewable resources are needed to be conserved more importantly because it takes a long time for the formation of these non-renewable resources. So it takes like millions of years to form those resources again. So renewable resources need some time to replenish. Overuse of natural resources hampers replenishment of these resources. So if we are really overusing, like for example, if we have to use 1 liter petrol and if we are using 10 liters a day, then it is like overusing that particular resource. So that is how it will be like causing a problem for the replenishment of that particular resource. So the following things can be practiced if we still want to enjoy the natural resources in the coming years and for our next generations also, like minimize cutting down the trees. What happens if we really cut down all the trees? Then it will reduce the carbon dioxide that is emitting from the automobiles will generally will be taken up by the trees. But if we cut down the trees, what happens? This carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gases will go to the atmosphere and deplete the ozone layer. When it is depleting the ozone layer, the temperature of the earth will increase and the rainfall will reduce and ultimately cause droughts. So that will cause problems and we will lose the water facility, and also the temperature will be very high on the earth. That causes very hard for our survival. So that is this simple thing that we can do is to minimize cutting down the trees. So we have to use less cutting down. We have to be minimizing, like limiting our cutting down of trees so that all these effects will be removed or lost. So using non-renewable resources should be done properly. So for example, non-renewable resources are like petroleum, for example, is a non-renewable resource. So if we want to use petroleum, we have to, for shorter distance, we have to use bicycle, so that the petrol use will be reduced. So that is how we properly have to manage and use the non-renewable resources, so that these will be used for the next generations. Finding methods to use renewable resources more. So for example, we have sunlight. This is the renewable resource. We have lot of sunlight coming from the sun. So the one of the best example is the photovoltaic applications in different automobiles. Like if we are able to apply the solar panels on domestic houses or for the applications of automobiles, the use of renewable resources will increase. It means we are not using, that will cut down the use of petroleum, that is the fossil fuels also, so that the renewable resources will be in more use and it will be better for the environment also. So this is how we can use the conservation of natural resources, so that that will be available for the next generations also. So what is the present status of India natural resources in India? So our India is really gifted with various types of natural resources such as fertile soil, forests, minerals and water. All these, we have all these, but they are unevenly distributed over all the countries. So the Indian continent covers a multitude of biotic and abiotic resources. We have very good rich quality of soil, lush green forests, then vast oceans like Indian Ocean, then a number of rivers that are available for the water, and also mountains, then a large amounts of mineral ores that are present. So due to all these, India is able to support about 17% of world's human population. 17% of world's human population. We are supporting 17% of world's human population, and also 20% of world's livestock. Livestock is nothing but animal welfare, and 2.5% of geographical area. Geographical area in the worldwide. So with this good natural resources, we are able to support worldwidely. So as India has a rapid population, why we are lacking some of the natural resources? Because we have a population, high population growing, so there is overconsumption of these resources. So such as uncontrolled logging or overfishing, and many valuable natural resources are rapidly exhausted. So utilized overusage of natural resources will cause depletion of natural resources. So we have to really take care or balance between both non-renewable and renewable resources, so that in the usage, so that we will be able to use the non-renewable resources for the future generations. So these natural resources are already present on Earth. So how we have to use, how we are going to use them, that requires some extraction procedure. So there is a procedure called extraction. So resource extraction involves an activity that withdraws resource from the nature. So we are digging out resource from the nature. So this can range in scale from traditional use of pre-industrial societies to global industry. It means we can even export to global industry if we have proper resources and extraction processes. So extractive industries are, along with agriculture and the basis of primary sector of the economy. So this forms primary sector, and the extraction produces raw material. So as soon as we mine them, what we need to be like, it is the raw material that is present, which should be processed. That should be processed to a particular product to add the value to that particular product. So examples for extractive industries are hunting, trapping, mining, oil and gas drilling, and forestry. So there are a lot of advantages from this extraction process, like even forestry. We have valuable herbal medicinal plants, and also like ornamental or other different advantages we'll be having. So the export and utilization of that, it should be done in a proper way. So extractive industries represent a large growing activity in many less developed countries, but doesn't that really doesn't add any wealth to that country for the sustainability and inclusive growth. So this is the process wherein we do the extraction. So when we do keep on extracting, the resource will get depleted. So this is nothing but the consumption of resource faster than it can be replenished. At any cost, the replenishing and the resource extraction should go parallelly. Otherwise, when the extraction is overdoing or over usage of resources takes place, that will go. The consumption will happen. More consumption will happen, causing depletion of that particular resource. So that takes longer time for the replenishment or again forming the same resource on the earth. So that is nothing but the depletion. So natural resources are commonly divided into renewable and non-renewable. So use of either of these forms of resources beyond the rate of replacement. So at any ways, when we are using them beyond their formation rate, that causes resource depletion. So the value of resource is a direct result of its availability in nature, and cost of extracting the resource. The more a resource is depleted, the more value of the resource increases. The demand will increase when it is getting depleted because that is not available in the earth. So there are several types of resource depletion. The most known is aquifer depletion. For example, if we are fishing too much, then the fish or the species get extinct. So that is one of the form. Then deforestation, when you are cutting down the trees, that also causes depletion of valuable trees or the plant species. So that also causes a depletion. So mining of fossil fuels and minerals, that also causes a depletion if we are using it for most widely, like for all the applications if we are going to use before it's getting replenishing, so it causes depletion. Pollution or contamination of resources, slash and burn agriculture practices, soil erosion, and overconsumption of excessive or unnecessary use of resources. All these causes depletion for the natural resources that are really given by the nature in the natural form. So the depletion of natural resources is caused by direct drivers of change, such as mining, petroleum extraction, fishing, and forestry. These are the direct ones wherein we do excessive extraction of resources that affects the natural resources that are present. The replenishment that also affects the replenishment of that resources. Before they gets replenished, we are taking out. So, and as well as indirect drivers of change such as demography, for example, population growth, these are also affecting the depletion of resources, because when the population is increasing, the use or the purpose will increase. When the purpose, need, wants increases, we have to extract the resources that are available. In that way also the overuse happens and therefore causing depletion. So these are the indirect way where the depletion is occurring. Economy, society, politics, and technology. For technological purposes also we are using resources, so that also causes depletion. So these are the different ways, indirect and direct ways, where it is affecting the depletion of natural resources. So we have to manage. So somehow we have to really manage these natural resources before they get depleted. So one of the way is, it is a discipline, like I said, natural resource management is a discipline in the management of natural resources such as land, water, soil, plants, and animals. They have to be protected with a particular focus on how management affects the quality of life for the future generations. So if we want to provide these resources for the future generation, it is important to protect them. So manage them before we are using it. So that is how it affects the quality of life. Then the disciplines of fisheries, forestry, wildlife are examples of large sub-disciplines of natural resource management. So these are some of the sub-disciplines of natural resource management which has to be considered to provide for the next generations. Now, the other one is the habitat conservation is a type of land management. Habitat is living land. So land management is also an important thing that seeks conserve, protect and restore habitat areas for wildlife, plants, especially conservation of brilliant species. For example, there are some different species that are extincting, animals or fisheries or any other plankton that is extincting because of these overuse of natural resources. So it is very important for managing these resources, and that prevents the extinction. So fragmentation and reduction in the range is very important. Like it will be it goes the number of the species will reduce. So it is important for us to manage the resources so that we use for our purpose and also protect the resources. So management of these natural resources involves identifying who has the right to use the resources. So the ownership, we have seen that there are certain different ownerships that are given. So it is also important who has the purpose to use or the right to use, and who does not have the right to use, for defining the boundaries of these resources. Not everyone can go and mine the petroleum. So that is not the case happening. So it is important for us to understand who really requires this resource and how much is it required. Only that much has to be used so that it goes in a proper managing way. So the resources may be managed by the users according to the rules governing when and how the resource is used, depending on local condition, or the resources may be managed by governmental organization and central authority. That is why ownership is very important. So all these will be managed by the ownership authorities, so that there is some limitation in extraction. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.